Welcome everybody who is listening and or watching to the Kingdom and its Stories. And in this particular interview session, we have Rich and Trish Fenger. And I didn't ask you guys this, but we had a coach when I went to high school many, many years ago, whose name was Les Fenger. I don't imagine you're related.
No.
Okay, all right. He was an incredible coach, and but anyway, so I know the name Finger, and it's our delight to have both of you with us on the program today. And in our program, we try to interview people who, with their lives, no matter what their vocation happens to be, are living the life that Christ has called us to live, which is to be like him, to anticipate what would he do with my life? How would he live out the life that he has given me in the world? And the two of you are doing that not only as parents, but with young people and preparing them for the world by helping them to understand that truth is not relative, that truth is what actually is. It's not what isn't. It's what is, and helping them to see the impact of that in their lives and in their witness as followers of Jesus in their world. And so I want to begin our interview time together today by asking either of you individually or together, tell us who you are. What's the elevator speech? In 30 to 60 seconds or a little longer of who are you? And Trish, you want to begin?
Sure. My name is Trish Fenger, and I was
Can you come a little closer to the mic?
I first came to Christ when I was 14 years old, through high school, through Young Life Ministries, and then I had grown up with a Catholic background, so I didn't know a lot about the scriptures and the Bible. And about 21, 22, I started to go to a church, really learning more about God and God's word. And that is where I met my husband, Rich.
Okay.
And then, and that's where we met and got married. And I'll let him share a little bit about his background.
Yeah, I actually got exposed to the Bible. I was reading a magazine when I was 16 years old on success, and there was an article in there. It's called Success Unlimited, and it said, "What book?" I said, "The greatest influence on your life." And they interviewed about 50 people, and I remember reading the article like, golly, whatever book comes out, that's the book I got to go read.
Right.
And the Bible was by far the number one winner of
really.
All.
Wow.
There were presidents of the U.S. and leaders, business leaders, and all sorts of leaders in different capacities, all who had been very successful. And I was just like, I remember going, upstairs, because I grew up Roman Catholic as well, and we had a kind of a book under the coffee table that nobody ever read, and and I remember dusting the cover off and starting to read it and thinking, oh gosh, how am I going to learn this book? How am I going to be a success in life? And this is at age 16. And then when I got to college, I ran into people who actually had Bibles and understood how to read them. And they eventually told me, oh, you really need to get born again if you're going to really understand this book. And I said, well, how do I do that? And that's, the rest is history. So.
Right. All right. So that's your early life. So you guys got married and you decided to have kids. And I understand you have 8 kids.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So we had talked before we got married and when we got married and decided that we would let God number our family. And so that's what we did. We also had been exposed, Richard had been exposed to homeschooling through hearing a speech that Greg Harris had done at Regent University.
One of the early founders of the homeschooling movement.
Okay. All right.
He was getting his master's at Regent University at the time and had heard that. So he had decided that he would like to do that. someday if the Lord blessed him with children.
Yeah, and children are a blessing from the Lord. It was Psalms 127. That's what really, really dealt with us early on when we were just newly married. It's like, how can we deny God's blessings to us?
Wow.
How can we turn those away?
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and so we just, whatever God gave us, she actually went to her bridal shower, told them all we were going to have 7 children, and we ended up being by 1, so we had 8. So
Yeah. Okay. So you're homeschooling your kids,
Yes.
yeah, we've homeschooled them all since day 1.
and why did you choose that route rather than public schools?
Well, I could see early on where the schools were going, and there was just, I mean, right now, I don't even think they've gone as far as they're going to go. But as far as teaching this, everything from morality to right now, they're teaching Marxism and they're teaching all sorts of alternative lifestyles. And sadly, you can actually go to a lot of public schools and find stuff about witchcraft and other religions and pantheism, but you can't find anything about Christianity. I mean, that would be separation of church and state. We can have all the other religions, but we can't have Christianity.
And so you decided homeschool.
So we decided to homeschool, and to be honest with you, that was the main reason. Is that we homeschooled is we just didn't want our children. We didn't want our daughters to get pregnant out of wedlock. We didn't want our boys to join gangs. We just didn't want the influence of all the other kids.
Right.
And little did we know, I mean, we have 3 in college right now, and they're all still going to church, and they're all 4.0s in their whatever the major that God has called them to. They're all at different schools. And that to me, that's, I mean, going to church is huge, and still serving God when you're in your 20s is huge. But the academic success and the excellence that homeschooling and homeschool speech and debate, which is what we're really kind of passionate for.
Because they were homeschooled, they didn't end up academically challenged, as some people might say.
No, it's been the total opposite. I mean, if anything, they show up and they have the answers. They're very, because of speech and debate, they're very articulate. They know how to give speeches. They'll raise their hand and sit on the front row, and they're just very conversant and very confident. And all that comes from, homeschool speech and debate and the leagues that we've been involved in.
Well, tell us about that. That sounds so. It's not only homeschooling, but it sounds like speech and debate, learning how to defend particular positions is an important part of what you have done with your kids. And I understand that you're doing this not only with your own kids, but you have other parents and other families that are doing homeschooling that you're involving in speech and debate. What's that all about?
We actually were the first family kind of to help start, in the particular league that we're involved in. We were the first family to join up. There was a student at Arizona State who had done this in Washington State, and he showed up here and he said, "Hey, how come we don't have homeschool speech and debate in Arizona?" And we really didn't. And so I think we've helped like at least 4 clubs get started, little clubs in different places in Phoenix. And now
You talk about a club. How big is a club?
well, some of them go all the way up to 100 students, but most of the clubs are much smaller than that.
Okay.
And
So they would range from what to 100?
probably 10 to 100 is where they run. And we're trying to help more clubs get started. I mean, we're very passionate. This is we're creating Christian leaders with a biblical worldview and a biblical understanding. I mean, some of these students will end up being preachers. I mean, they're learning biblical apologetics. Some of them will end up being attorneys, statesmen, lawyers.
How old are these kids?
And they already have. There's a lot of students that have already gone.
They've already gone, and they all go. A lot of them go. Most of them go to college, and they'll walk through the mall, and they'll see, well, golly, there's the Muslim table over there. I already know all about that. I mean, I've studied. It was one of my apologetic questions. What's the difference between Jesus and all the other religious leaders? And so they've got this
Well,
foundation.
how does that come about through a debate club?
It's not just debate. it started off, when we got involved, we thought that's all they had. And I remember there was one day where when we first started, we started very small. And I remember we had about, I don't know, about 12 kids or so, and they all quit except for our son. Our son was the only one that still wanted to do it. And this is like the second year in that we're trying to
Okay.
do this. And I remember sitting we were in the Tempe library, and everybody had quit. And I was sitting there, and my son was talking to the coach and a couple tables over, and I thought, Lord, should we quit too? And suddenly the peace of God, it talks about in Colossians 3, that surpasses all understanding, just
Right.
engulfed me, and I knew we had to continue. And the next year, sure enough, a couple families joined. They knew a whole bunch of other people, and we had about 16 kids in the club, and everything just kept going from there. And so,
Okay, but how does learning about different faiths come out of speech and debate?
well, all right. There's a debate. There's three. Well, there's a whole slew of different debate styles, but there's also speech styles and speech events. And one of the events is called the biblical apologetics. And for that, the students have to get somewhere between 8 and 100 different. They build speeches. Everything from, I mean, what are some of the
They
speeches?
have a list of
They have a whole list of
already.
questions that the students, and they'll have 6 or 7 cards, and they have a little box, like a shoe box, full of
Okay.
all these speeches. And so they show up at the tournaments, and they show up at the club meetings, and they practice these speeches. Is the Bible true? Is there a God? Is truth relative? Can science contradict the Bible? If God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world? And our daughter had to deal with that when she went to college. Some girl came in and asked her, because she ended up
Well,
becoming.
just because you have the question doesn't mean you have the answer. So,
We create the answers, though. We study the answers. We wrestle with the answers. We help the students answer all these questions.
okay.
We meet once a week for several hours, and we encourage father involvement. And so we meet in the evenings when the dads are not in work, and we go through the questions together.
And there's a whole slew of resources. I mean, we use, sometimes we'll dig into theology books. I think there's a book by Grudem they use. And sometimes they'll go on the internet and search for answers. And they just search, the students are learning how to search the scriptures. What does the Bible say about this?
Okay. So let me try to understand this. So the kids have a question, and then they're responsible. Tell me if I'm getting this right. They're responsible for researching the answer to the question, and you help them with the resources to know where to go to look for the answers. And then out of that, they build an answer, a response, a speech, which that they give then in competition with.
Right. And here's what's so powerful about it. So how do you get saved? I mean, they'll create a speech on how to get saved. They'll have an introduction. Maybe they'll have Josh McDowell or somebody in the quote at the very beginning.
Okay.
And then they'll have a few scriptures and a few quotes. But then not after they write the speech, and they got to do all this research, then they practice it. They practice it in the club 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And then they go to the competitions, and they're giving the speech as well. So they're really learning and internalizing all the answers to all these key critical Christian questions of the faith.
Okay.
Everything from, is the Bible true, to who is Jesus Christ, and who is man fallen or not? I mean, all these things are, they internalize it. And so I don't know, am I leaving anything off on?
No, you're doing great. But let me just interrupt for a second to say, what we're doing is this is a broadcast of the Kingdom and its stories, in which we interview people who have learned or are learning. It's really both, who are learning and have learned how to be Jesus' hands and feet. And today we're interviewing Rich and Trish Fenger, who are expressing that in the area of equipping their kids and their friends' kids. And they have started a number of debating clubs in which kids are being prepared to learn how to deal with some of the key questions of life, and learning how to not only ask those questions, but learning how to research the answers to those questions and then to defend them in speech and debate, even with competition debating clubs. And how do you've got about 100 kids altogether that you're working with through your clubs?
It's ranged in different sizes.
I would say there's probably about 200 total in Arizona that are involved in this. I mean, there's a club in Flagstaff. There's a little club in Tucson. There's actually a club. It was in Ehrenberg, but now it's in Blythe, California.
Okay.
So and there's probably about 4 or 5 in Phoenix, in the Phoenix area. So
Right.
they're all over the state, which is what we want. I think personally, this is one of the most powerful things that our kids can ever do. I mean, and we've been homeschooling for, egads, 20 some years. And so we've seen a lot of different activities. It's just, we haven't seen anything quite this powerful. Where the kids...
I love it. It's an incredible idea. And one of the things that I like about it, it's equipping kids not just to do, but to think.
Yes.
And, and to think and to be able to think critically.
Yes.
And not just to accept what they hear, but to get a question, to research it, and to be able to defend their answer.
Yes. And when they do the debate stuff, they actually stand next to each other, and there'll be cross-examination. So there is that part of it as well. I mean,
and they do not debate the Bible, just so that's clear. Our league sets up the resolution every year, and it changes.
Okay.
This year,
I mean, they can be debating everything from, what are some of the debate topics?
It was the criminal justice this year. It's been biomedical engineering. There's different things so they're also going out. There's also a policy debate, whereas they are suggesting a different policy.
Should we change our tax, the way the U.S. government does their tax policy or their energy policy or maybe their food policy? I mean,
these are pretty heavy. These are pretty heady issues.
Yes.
They're very, very,
They're learning. They're learning how the government works.
And they're learning how to think.
They're learning how I would respond to somebody when they come against what I am saying, and just things like that.
Yeah. In our woke society today, I would think that is critically important for our kids to learn how to think and not.
Well, they really need to be prepared, because right now the students have to go off, and they're either going to go into the workforce and have a career, or they're going to go into one of the universities that doesn't really want people to be Christian anymore. So they really need to be strong. They need to be trained.
They need to have a foundation before, because we knew we had both gone to Arizona State. We knew that there's a pretty good chance our kids were going to some of them could end up at the state school, and we really wanted a real solid foundation, and this provides that. And it's worked. I mean, it's really worked well.
Yeah. Tell us a story or two of the long-term impact of this kind of training for young people.
Yes. I can tell a few stories. One, just with our own daughter, she decided that she wanted to go to Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and she applied for being a Bible study leader in her dormitory. And they
Trish, a little closer to the mic, please. Thank you.
Okay, she got the position when she interviewed to be a Bible study leader at the university, and
there were like 30 girls that she was doing this Bible study for.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things they said when they interviewed her is, "Are you concerned that one of the students might ask you a question that you don't have an answer to?" And she said, "Oh no, not at all." She said, "We'll just research it together, and we'll just find the answer together." And in fact, one of the students, she said, "Mom, one of the students asked me, if God is so good, why is there so much evil in the world?" And that was one of her apologetic questions.
Okay.
I got my apologetic box out, and I took out the question that I had researched already, and I shared it with the student. And so she's already having an impact in her college today, learning how to be a leader and to teach other students. And there's just amazing stories that have come out of this.
That's a great story. Tell us another one.
Well, there's one student that comes to mind now. In addition, in our club, we add the Summit Worldview curriculum that teaches them the biblical worldview, and it teaches them about truth and a lot of other things.
Alternative
And
belief systems too.
Okay.
there was one student that, some of the boys just didn't always seem engaged. Like they were watching the videos, they were there. I wasn't sure if they were listening or not. And then we went to competition, and one of our students did an original oratory speech on truth. And he talked about it's not your truth, it's not whatever somebody else thinks. There's only one truth, and it's God's truth. And I was so blessed to hear this speech because I thought he's got it, he's understanding, he's listening. And even though it may not seem like he is, sometimes it's having an impact on him.
Yeah, that was from a student who she didn't think was listening.
Yes. We have a story from another student who was only 11 years old, and his parents had met in the Dream City Church ministry in Phoenix. They had come from drug backgrounds and got radically saved and wanted to start homeschooling their children. And he did not have the internet. He had a Bible.
Very, very poor family in West Phoenix.
A Bible and a concordance. And
that's an 11-year-old student.
Yes.
11-year-old student, a Bible and a concordance.
And he had 10 of the apologetic questions. And he would take one of those questions and he would read his Bible, he would pray, he would look up in the concordance, and he was writing these amazing speeches.
Well, he would go to the library too. He would go to the library and go on the internet.
Okay.
And he would get quotes and stuff there, but
he was writing amazing speeches at age 11, and I was just so blessed to see their family just was on fire for God. They wanted to do things right, and it was a blessing to see that we were helping this young student learn about the scriptures and learn about God. Being
the hands and feet of Jesus.
Yeah. And there was a gentleman out of California. I want to share about Luis. He started doing apologetics. His mom was very like, you really need to do this. And I don't know if he initially wanted to do it, but he would, before the competitions, he would practice like 5 of the speeches every time. He ended up going and getting 2 degrees in theology after he graduated. Mm-hmm. Now he's pastoring a church in Santee, California. So
it's amazing.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story because you learn how to preach, you learn how to talk, you learn how to wrestle with the scriptures. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of different sides. And you
learn how to think too. I mean, there was a girl in the West Wing of the White House during the Trump administration.
Yes.
So,
who had come out of these leagues.
Learning how to think.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Rich and Liz, you have 60 seconds to challenge parents who are listening or people who have young people in their lives that they can influence. What would you say to them?
Well, first off, I would say you've got to homeschool. I mean, these parents need to find out what's being taught in the public schools. It is not what it was like, Bob, when you were a child. It has changed. I mean, the teachers are radically aggressive in trying to train these children into other non-Christian, non-traditional family belief systems. So I think homeschooling is a huge part, and the state is even helping people now financially to homeschool. It just doesn't even make sense not to. And I know for a lot of women that means they would have to stay home, or sometimes men stay home with their children.
There's a lot of support. Homeschoolers are not just strange people that stay in their homes all the time. We are very busy. We go to co-op meetings all the time. We're actually rarely home.
And there's a lot of online stuff too. There's a lot of support right now. There's a big convention in July.
And a big reason that we did it is because bad company corrupts good morals. And when they're in the public school, that's their family, and they're with those people more than they are with their parents. And so they have a greater influence. So we would say to homeschool. We would also say to learn your Christian faith yourself, and to maybe get some biblical worldview type curriculum or teaching that you can listen to, so that you know how to influence and how to teach these kids. You got to have a background.
Yeah, we're out of time. Thank you both very, very much. And may we go on to do more of what you're doing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
having
having
us.
us.